Roberta in the truth zone, mic hitting raw. Spotlight shining, she exposing the flaw. Debunking the myth, breaking their facade. This is Glass City, respect the squad. On these NYC blocks where the skyline flex big. Roberta Glass slicing lies with a truth rig. Innocence frosters, your stories unravel. She's a map through the madness of gritty gravel. Glass don't bend and facts don't break. She's the storm that's called, you feel the quake. Exposing tales stitched with crooked seams. Justice in the lens, shattered fake dreams. Screams about killers, painted heroes in disguise. She burning propaganda with fire in her eyes. No glamour for the guilty, she call it straight. She backs victims, the voice stay away. Stats and receipts, no spin, no clutter. Cold cases whisper, she cuts through the mutter. Truth's her tempo, don't confuse the beat. She's standing for the real while you taking a seat. True crime's a block, facts the artillery. Spinning those lies, yo, she checks that misery. Tabloid tales get smashed, no time to play. She's glass hard, break the false and save the day. True crime's a block, facts the artillery. Spinning those lies, yo, she checks that misery. Tabloid tales get smashed, no time to...
Okay, how is everybody? It is a very chilly, frosty day here in the Northeast. And I want to talk about Nick Reiner and a new report out today this comes from Rob Shooter's Substack. It's an exclusive to his Substack, and it's been picked up all over the place, saying that Nick Reiner's family is terrified that more private medical history could be exposed amid alleged killer's trial. And so they say the family is terrified of a trial, but what they're really terrified is of additional medical details coming out that could be put into the public domain. Details about his alleged schizophrenia have already surfaced. I mean, what details are they talking about? And here's what I think it's really about. I mean, let me give you some of these quotes. Again, these are unnamed sources. A source who spoke with Rob Shooter, the family of Rob Shutter of Shutterscope, the family had intentionally kept these details away from the public, despite being known that Nick had mental struggles. They've worked so hard to keep these issues private, no one knew about them, a source shared. So they've already been leaked into the public domain, so what are they talking about? I mean, there could not be more reports about his alleged schizoaffective disorder, the medication change right before he killed his parents, famed director, actor Rob Reiner, and his photographer, wife, and Nick Reiner's mother, Michelle Singer Reiner. So this to me sounds like another defense push by the defense. Or it's someone misinterpreting, or it's someone close to the family who's misinterpreting what the family's really saying, which is that they're terrified of having to live through a trial, which a trial for a victim's family member, and in this case, Romy and Jake, Nick Reiner's the middle child, so Jake is his older brother and Romy is his younger sister, are both related to the victim in this case and the perpetrator. So they're in this, unfortunately, not unique position, but an uncomfortable position, and unfortunately not uncommon position where they're related to both the perpetrator and the victims. But to go through a trial is absolute agony for the victim's family. in all these cases that we talk about. So what are they really saying? Are they scared of all their dirty laundry coming out, the family's dirty laundry? Because we certainly knew about Nick Reiner's addiction, because that was in the, they made a movie about it together, Rob Reiner and Nick Reiner did, called Being Charlie. You can watch it for free on YouTube. But to me, I mean, and what are they really? They're ashamed of his medical history? That seems unlikely. So they're not ashamed of his drug abuse, drug addiction, but now they're ashamed of his mental health history? Or are they ashamed of his violent past, which we heard about multiple incidences where the police had to be called? And we know that Rob Reiner told someone at Conan O'Brien's Christmas party the night of, or the morning, he was early morning, he was murdered. We're not exactly sure when these crimes occurred, that he was afraid his own son, Nick Reiner, could hurt him. That's what he told, that's what Rob Reiner told someone at Conan O'Brien's party. So they were well aware of his propensity for violence, and those stories go all the way back to 14, 15 years old, where he would explode into anger. Nick Reiner himself has said in a taped interview that he gets crazy, meaning he's not laid back and mellow. He has an explosive temper, and from all reports, a violent temper. But what I think, if this is a real report, I think they said we're terrified of facing a trial. And here's some of the quotes from it. This is not just a legal case, it's a family tragedy. They're terrified of what happens if everything becomes public. Right, who wants all their family dirty laundry in the public domain that hasn't already been put there? So is there more horrifying stuff that's going to come out? Maybe. And the toll it will take on everyone who loved Rob, Michelle, and Nick. But they've worked so hard to keep these issues private. No one knew about them. So to me, it sounds like they're afraid of having to face a trial, which is heinous and horrible. But nowhere are there any really specific quotes related to his medical issues. Again, it's the same TMZ stuff added with it, with these a few quotes. It's like someone took these quotes and filled in the blank as to what they mean. I mean, it's just as I am, I have to admit that I'm a little, but I think I'm sticking a little closer to the quotes here. It's not just a legal case, it's a family tragedy, right? And to be on public display at the worst time in your life, if this is going to be televised, is horrible. Just going to court every day is horrible. And just reinforces the trauma of it. It's going to be awful. And I think what they're talking about here is the reality that Nick Reiner, as much as I have said I think he wants to go to trial because this is the only thing he's done that has brought him any attention, real attention, that's not it is connected with his famous father, but I'm sure he feels like it's the ultimate expression of his power and control over the family. And I think he held a lot of power and control over this family. It's his time to play victim, and he can rewrite the story the way he wants to, because the victims in this story are dead. He murdered them, Rob and Michelle Reiner. But I think that there's really not much to negotiate with. So oftentimes before a trial, the defense will meet with the prosecution and they'll negotiate a plea deal. before the 2019 moratorium on the death penalty in California, they had they still have the they could say they, we'll take the death penalty off the table if you plead guilty to life in prison without the possibility of parole, or life in a mental health institution without the possibility of parole. However they're going to do it, I don't know, something like that. But they don't have that, really, because everyone knows that the death penalty in California, they're not going to go through with it. I mean, unless things change drastically in that area, I mean, I don't think they're ever going to go through with it. So you have that. So what can they, I mean, they're not going to give him 20, 30 years in prison. That's like 15 years for each murder. So what do they have? It seems like they're coming to the realization that this is going to trial, whether Nick Reiner likes it or not, or whether they like it or not, because there's not much to negotiate. Unless you want this guy walking the streets. And it's interesting because here is, I believe, a ideology that we know Rob Reiner and Michelle Reiner really push forward, which is this ideology that we have this mass incarceration problem in the U.S. and we should be doing these lower sentences, and we should have what they have in Europe of like 20 to 30 years. I say this because of their involvement in trying to free the murderer Nan Williams, and they were writing him emails that they loved him. I covered it in almost every episode I've talked about Nick Reiner. And certainly the hiring of Alan Jackson, this high-powered defense attorney, for $4 million, seemed to think, like, let's get, I think originally what Romy and Jake thought, Reiner thought, was like, let's get our brother the shortest sentence possible, or the best defense possible. And after speaking, this is what the reports, after speaking with family members, they decided that he made this decision to murder his parents on his own, and he's going to be on his own for his defense. So Alan Jackson stepped down. That was certainly what the reports were. If there's another reason, maybe it'll come out later. I mean, it's always, you always have to be so skeptical and cautious in anything that comes out pre-trial. All this information, because certainly we've had contradicting reports. And it looked like Alan Jackson was kind of pushed this narrative of poor mental health, schizophrenia, and with the help of TMZ, that Nick Reiner was so out of his head. He's acting, quote, almost childlike in jail, according to Harvey Levin's TMZ, who owns TMZ. I don't even know what that means, acting almost childlike. Was he acting like a child, or wasn't he? And then he thought a conspiracy was after him, and he gained all this weight because of these medications. But if you notice, he is Rob Reiner's son. And Rob Reiner did start out as a thin man and looked like Nick Reiner was balding too. Became a balding, chunkier man as he got older. So I'm just not sold that these reports, even if he did get a real diagnosis from a real psychiatrist or doctor, this would not be the first time someone malingered to get a diagnosis in Los Angeles. And we know that he, according to Nick Reiner's own words on the Dopey podcast, had faked mental illness before when he didn't get what he wanted in rehab. He pretended to be crazy and threw a rock through a window. So and I think everybody's forgetting about Anybody remember the story of Morgan Geyser and Lessa Weir? It was called the Slenderman stabbings. And her mother did Morgan Geyser's mother did a lot of press saying that Morgan Geyser's father was schizophrenic, but she never saw any signs of schizophrenia, which is interesting. But then Morgan Geyser was telling the court and the court experts that she was hearing voices. And then when it came time for her to be released, she said, "Never mind, I faked it all." So just to read you, a Wisconsin woman who had at the age of 12 said she stabbed a 6th grade classmate nearly to death to please the online horror character Slender Man remains a risk to the public and won't be released yet from a psychiatric hospital, a judge said Thursday. So she went to a mental health facility instead of being incarcerated in some and since, was it 2022, she hadn't been on any medication. She told her care team there that she had malingered and faked things. She was initially diagnosed with schizophrenia spectrum disorder, but had been off antipsychotic medication since 2022 with no new symptoms, said Dr. Ken Robbins. And when she finally said that she faked it all, let me just share this article with you guys so you can see what I'm looking at here. It's like they didn't believe her, but they believed her enough to take her off the medication. But she used to come into court like really heavily medicated, clearly heavily medicated. And this is a part of the story that's really being forgotten. Here's a doctor who has worked with Slender Man stabber Morgan Geyser for a decade said the inmate's claims that she faked psychotic symptoms mean she is less eligible for release than she may feel. On day 2 of a conditional release hearing, Dr. Brooke Lundenbaum spoke of an inconsistencies in the 21-year-old's reporting of her mental health state, and that meant she still posed a risk to herself and the community. How about that she's a highly manipulative person, and which would be a massive danger. Eventually, they let her out into a halfway house. She cut her ankle bracelet off and escaped with a trans-identified, I don't know, wannabe murderer groupie. I mean, she also says she's now, she's also trans-identified now too. Geyser is serving a 40-year sentence in a mental health institute. I mean, they gave her such a short sentence. Not even 10 years. Ultimately, so originally they ruled she was not ready for release, but eventually she's got released. Despite a year without psychotic symptoms, Dr. Lundenbaum says Geyser was still several months away from being ready to leave the Winnebago Mental Health Institute. So eventually, against the protests of the prosecutors, they released her. So let me just share some of that hearing. Let's take a listen to it together. This is Morgan Geyser's psychiatrist. Take a listen.
We know she wasn't well, and the records are replete for years that she wasn't well. And it's incredible to think that she could have faked that well, something she didn't know how to do.
What do you mean something she didn't know how to do? Children don't know how to fake things? And Nick Reiner is 34. She's a child who grew up with a schizophrenic dad. She knew the symptoms. What you have to do is get a book. They're saying, no, their egos can't take it that they were fooled. And the only person who says that they can't be fooled, the person who says they can't be fooled, they're the mark, right?
She appeared psychotic before she ever arrived to the doorstep of a mental health institution.
On the revelation that she
appeared. How are you going to get into her head? This is my problem with getting into the mind of a killer. How are you going to get in? With a can opener? It's all self-reporting. And we know that psychopaths lie. They lie a lot. We know that criminals lie. We know that all sorts of personality disorders lie. To my mind, Nick Reiner looks like a classic antisocial personality, otherwise known as a psychopath. What are we talking about here? But I'm just going to go back a little bit so we can get the context of what this doctor is saying. Take a listen.
To the doorstep of a mental health institution.
on the revelation that she made that she was faking, is there any indication as to why she would now report faking if it wasn't true?
I don't know the answer to that, Judge.
I do. I feel like a kid in a classroom. Ooh, 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 me. I know the answer. So she wouldn't have to go to prison. She wouldn't have to be tried possibly as an adult. If you watch her interrogation tapes, they're absolutely chilling. What are we talking about here? This was all whitewashed. To even find this, it took me so long to even find where this is referenced. Nobody wants to talk about this. I think the evidence that she faked it is that she's been off her medication for years, doing fine, according to her. Unless you want to consider running away a part of a mental illness. I don't know. I'm sure someone will in the audience think running away is a sign of a mental illness. But what are we talking about here? I wanted to play one other thing. It's just a quickie for today. I mean, this is just really a short article. But I think the defense, every time there's a damaging, and I've done 2 episodes on a really damaging story that came out about Nick Reiner and what an entitled, scary, violent person he is, and how he lived at his parents' guest house and called his parents and the guests who came for Thanksgiving 2018 freeloaders in his house, and how I talked about how I believed it really was his house, meaning he was controlling it. He was the one in control. He was ruling the roost. And he controlled with all his problems, right? And if you listen to the Dopey podcast, he never really wants to quit everything. He feels like he's entitled to do drugs and that the recovery industry is the problem. And you get that clearly from being Charlie. It seems like his parents adopted that idea that he sold them, that it was really the recovery industry making him worse, not Nick Reiner determined to do what he was going to do. He's getting a $10,000 a month allowance when everything was provided. So that's just a license to, that's just, they're paying for his habit, no? What else are you going to buy with $10,000 a month if everything's paid for? Your rent, your clothing, etc. I don't know. Maybe a ticket to a movie occasionally? I don't know. Ticket to a musical performance once in a while. But that doesn't even break the $1,000 level. So pretty interesting. Let's just watch it, like maybe a little bit more of this.
I keep thinking of that statement by Abraham Lincoln. You can fool all of the people some of the time, some of the people all of the time, but not all of the people all of the time. Is this a situation that we're in?
Really hard to say what you mean by that question, Judge. Do you mean that she fooled all of the people, her entire care team? And now the joke's on her because she's even more dangerous by admitting that she fooled them all? She's not taking any medication. Her symptoms just magically cleared up one day. I get that people can live with these illnesses, but come on. Really? So, just a little reminder of what we're dealing with here. So, if we see experts that he went to, I'm still skeptical that this story wasn't invented by Alan Jackson. The story of Nick Reiner's schizophrenia and how Alan Jackson is so absolutely certain he's not responsible. But if it turns out to be true, what a have some skepticism, because what another way to seek sympathy. And it seems like Nick Reiner really exploited his father and mother's empathetic nature. All right, just a quick word from our sponsor today's show, and I will be right back.
And now a word from today's sponsor. Shelley Levisay never imagined she'd become a statistic. As a prosecutor, she fought for domestic violence victims. As a Christian and a professional, she believed in second chances and the power of love. But when she met Matthew, a veteran with PTSD and a violent past, her compassion became her weakness. He manipulated her, abused her, and nearly destroyed everything she'd worked for. Love Isn't Always the Answer is more than a memoir. It's a wake-up call. Shelley's story reveals the insidious nature of narcissistic abuse and the courage it takes to reclaim your life. If you've ever felt trapped in a relationship, or if you know someone who has, this book is for you. Start reading today and discover a story of survival, redemption, and hope. The link is in this episode's description. Read Love Isn't Always the Answer, a memoir written by defense attorney Shelley Levisay. Available in Kindle, audiobook, or paperback.
Okay, we are back. All right. How is everybody? How's everybody going? Hey, Dark Side. Hey, Dater. Hey, Maestro. Okay, here we go. So I just wanted to share with you guys a bit of Dopey Podcast 45, part 1. Sorry, I'm getting confused. It's episode 45, part 1. Here we go. And where he talks about this rat park experiment. So if you don't know, the rat park experiment was an experiment done, I believe, by Canadian researchers, but I may be wrong on that, where they took rats and they isolated them and they gave them levers with access to narcotics, and the 90% of the rats would use until they, or a good portion of the rats would use until they OD'd. Then they put them in a social situation, because the rats are apparently very social and with lots of other things to do besides substances, and that most of them didn't use at all, but there was still a 10% portion who did, but the majority of them with other things to do and in a good environment just ignored the open access to substances. So here's Nick Reiner talking about that experiment. Take a listen. I think it's pretty interesting.
So I'm just going to give a
cue this up. Hold on one second. I think it's right. Should be right around here.
And sailed around the world. And he went, somehow raised money.
Have you heard of a thing called Rat Park?
Yeah. Okay, so I know a lot. So I speak.
Have you talked about this?
I've talked about it on the show. So the Rat Park, the one thing, though, is that they misquoted a lot. So it's...
Time out. What's Rat Park?
I was going to give a brief rundown. Rat Park is an experiment that they did where they took 10 rats and they put it in a cage.
You did talk about this once.
With nothing in the cage. And one water was filled with just water, and the other water bottle was filled with water and cocaine. And
heroin, I think, right? Was it opiates?
Some drug.
Some opiates, yeah.
And 9 out of the 10 rats or mice, they died of an overdose.
It was like hell. It was like rat hell.
Rat hell.
Yeah.
And then they had another cage filled with wheels and mountains and whatever.
They call it the Rats Carlton.
Whatever rats do, they were having sex. They were doing the whole thing. And sometimes they'd go, but no, they would just drink the normal water because they needed it. And you wonder why people relapse. It's because people are, they're bogged down by this system. They have to keep going in and out of jail. They're marked as this pariah of society. And I just feel like if anyone has a drug problem, they should feel free to come out and express it how they want.
Let me.
They should express it how they want to. I mean, that's what you get from this podcast all the time. He's like, I should be able to do what I want. I should be able to do what I want. But what's interesting to me, what I got from this clip, was that he missed the most important thing about that Rat Park experiment, which was, so it's supposed to be, right, was that rats are very social, and that it was being with each other and being able to do activities. It's not just the environment, it's really being with each other and not being so isolated and having access to do other activities that they're interested in. So Nick Reiner, having no other interests besides that, can't really take it. He's like, it's just that these rats, like in the real life, we put this, they have to do this, that, and the other. They just, it's that the system is so bad, the rehab system is so bad, and their prisons are so bad. Without the prisons and rehab, there would be a lot less drug doing. It's just like he seems to miss the social, the most crucial part of the whole experiment. I thought that was such a psychopathic, antisocial take on this. And you can see they'll start to correct him. So let's listen on a little bit, and they'll see it, and they'll be like, well, rats are really, they'll be like, yeah. Take a listen. Take a listen to them, just sort of confused by his take on the rat part, this is a very famous experiment. Take a listen to his take on it. To the Dopey podcast, Dopey Chris and Dopey Dave. Those are the two hosts of this podcast. Unfortunately, Dopey Chris relapsed doing this podcast and OD'd. Very sad. And now it's just done by Dave.
I have some serious questions.
Let me say some stuff about the rats. So the rats, they did that experiment because all these GIs were over in Vietnam banging dope, right? Like a lot of them, like 80% or something. A lot of people use heroin. And then they came back. They were addicted to heroin, and a lot of them just stopped. And they were like, what the, we thought heroin was a life sentence. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're like, there must be a social reason why people use. Their life was hell.
Yeah, the part that he missed, the part that Nick missed, they're trying to fill in. They're like, no, listeners. This isn't about just how bad the rehab industry is that makes people keep using. That's what he was saying, and I think that's what he convinced his parents. that somehow it seems like the Reiner family outlook was that any kind of system was bad and people didn't do well in systems and they had to be this kind of freedom to no consequences. I know he did 18 rehabs, but they were some of the most pampering, the ones I've heard about. The lodge, this is called the Alina Lodge in New Jersey. Very famous, cushy rehab is one.
They were in a war zone, so they were all banging dope. Then they came back and a lot of them stopped, you know? So they devised this experiment and that confirmed it with the rats, you know? And they actually took rats who were addicted to the heroin from the cage and they put them in the nice cage.
Oh, wow.
And they would maintenance themselves off the heroin water and drink the regular water.
That's crazy.
But what's often not quoted when they mention this is there was a percent.
Right. So what they said was they were wondering why so many of the soldiers that came back from Vietnam when they were in supportive environments just quit cold turkey from a drug that's very hard to quit. So that's one explanation, but there are lots that didn't. And here's Chris or Dave talking about the 10% that of the rats who were in the heavenly part of the park, the social part of the park that didn't make it. Take a listen.
Go slow.
Just
go slow.
There was a percentage of the rats
People don't know what
that used the heroin water no matter what. It was about 10%, which coincides with the genetic markers for addiction in the human race.
So the afflicted,
listen,
the dopey nation of rats stayed high.
No, not necessarily. What he's saying is, and I believe this to be true, because this is why I don't think you can say there's, like some people try to say, there's no such thing as addiction. And I've seen it. I've seen the person who literally is an addict. He's
got it in his blood.
It's in his
He was
blood.
born that way.
You're looking at him right now. This is him.
And you look like a happy guy to me, so I wouldn't say anything.
It's because he's clean.
And it's because he's clean. But I think that's interesting that you say that, because I think there's some people it doesn't matter, nurture, nature, it's just in them.
It's just in their blood. And I do think that 12-step groups are pretty good for those people, because 12-step philosophy is you can't use anything and stuff like that. And I agree with you, all the stuff you said.
So Nick Reiner was saying that he could still use cannabis and it was no problem for him. Although his sister, Romy, said she had a problem and had to quit and become abstinent from it, interestingly. But he makes that argument. That's why he doesn't like AA and other things, because it will make you use even more because it's all or nothing philosophy.
There's some dogma in it that's very difficult to swallow. And there's a lot of stuff like within the program that's not great. But, and also what's different is like in the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders, which is what's used in psychology, we meet the criteria for a substance use disorder.
That's new.
Well, it was called there was a DSM-4. It's been in it for a while, right? Which is classified as a disease and stuff. But you can meet the criteria for a substance use disorder, and I don't think you can be that genetic born alcoholic. And those people who might meet that criteria, I think, can benefit from harm reduction and maybe successfully moderate in life. But the genetic person who's got in their blood, I don't think they can really moderate. It's very difficult. You know?
No, I don't think they can.
I have some very, very specific questions.
We're going to tell some stories at some point, though.
Maybe.
Dopey Nation.
Maybe we will and maybe we won't.
Yeah.
Because this 32 minutes just...
I run locked in the chamber, but go ahead.
No, because, we're going to get to a story then. I do not want to deny you, but I just want to clarify some stuff. Because, Nick, this movie was very big. You know, you did all the big shows. You're on Howard Stern. Well, I mean, you're probably...
The movie wasn't big. I think the topic was big. Because
your dad is big. And the release was big. It was in the Daily News. It was in a lot of places. I
Isn't that interesting? He's like, well, my dad is big. The subject was big. But when you watch this movie, and I encourage everybody to watch it, it's on YouTube for free. right now, being Charlie. Everyone is so unlikable. So the people at the rehab are unlikable. His love interest is unlikable and seems to have no personality. But the main character is supposed to be a stand-up comedian. And I get that, certainly I know from growing up with my father in the business, that comedians are the most dark, disturbed people on some of the most dark, disturbed people on planet Earth. But he just like one day does stand-up at rehab and doesn't seem to have any interest in it. It's not like he's like escaping rehab and running to the Comedy Cellar or something. He just like randomly has this very Rob Reiner-ish sounding comic monologues that he does on stage. But the rest of him is like really flat and unlikable. So you don't even know where this comedy interest is coming from because nothing about him is particularly funny. It's so awkward. And talk about nobody, this is what studio execs used to ask screenwriters, who are we rooting for? Who are we rooting for? No one in Being Charlie. Everyone is so unlikable. It's such an awkward, cringy watch. And I can just see apparently they argued on the set, like broke out into full out fights, like really vicious fights. Rob Reiner and Nick Reiner did on the set of Being Charlie. Because Nick Reiner was being credited as the writer. I'm sure Rob Reiner wanted to add more personality to the hero. And Nick Reiner was like, I want him to be realistic like me, totally flat and entitled and selfish and manipulative and unlikable. I mean, that's what you get. And then the father is apologizing for what? The father is a politician in this, excuse me. It's like a political guy. How do you describe a politician? I think he's running for Senate or Congress in it. Excuse me if I don't remember. But he apologizes at the end, and you're like, what are you apologizing for, Dad? This guy, your son's a nightmare. It's such an enlightening watch after you're get more familiar. If you've listened to these dopey podcasts and you get a better sense of his character.
Saw it around.
I know, but it was just released in like a couple of theaters. So like it was, I think. Oh yeah, sorry.
No, please. No, because you know better than I do.
You don't sound like. Did you like the movie, or is it?
You didn't love the movie.
I feel like I didn't get to express how I truly felt in it.
Well, that was where I was.
How much creative control did you have?
1/3, and 1/3 technically, and 1/8 realistically.
Okay.
Well, this is the first question. It's like the story is supposed to be, and I'm not talking about the story of the movie.
Okay, so this is Chris vaping through the vaping. You hear these like very loud vaping through the interview. The early days of podcasts. I'm in a glass house with, if you go back to, I don't even think I used a microphone in my first couple podcasts. So nobody knew anything about recording and how annoying that would be if you just vape through an entire interview.
Saying in order to promote the movie, you kind of have to be sober. You kind of have to be a poster boy for recovery. And you didn't want to be that.
I said to them, listen, I'm not in the position to do this. I'm not a quote-unquote sober guy. I'm going to have to go on to these talk shows. They said, you got to do it. They want the whole father-son angle. It just shows you how disgusting the
Of course.
I mean, just the story out there. So I just went out there and I just realized.
What's disgusting? How are you going to sell it otherwise? Your dad directed it. You wrote it. They want the father-son angle. What other angle would they want? What other angle would they want? They want your dad to just go out alone without you? How else would you sell this thing, realistically? He's like, you can see how disgusting it was. That they'd want to attach me to my famous father, who gives me I don't know if he did at this time, but he went on to give him, this was 2016 that this was recorded, a $10,000 allowance and lets me live in his guest house that I wrecked. If I were his parent and he wrecked that guest house, I'd be like, you're living in it. You're living in the shambles. You're going to live with the wrecked stuff until you have enough money to replace it. But no, they replaced all the stuff he broke. You know, it's just like, no, you just never saw consequences for his behavior. I'm not saying that's why they were murdered. I'm just saying, just to try to give you a little bit of an idea of the environment. And it sounds like constant trying to cover up that he was using drugs. We know that, and I put this link in the description, so we know that his father, Rob Reiner, insisted tortured son Nick had been clean for 6 years, weeks before the 32-year-old. It gets very graphic about the crime in a way that I'm not comfortable with. Rob Reiner described his son Nick as healthy and stable just weeks before the 32-year-old was arrested and charged with the brutal killings of the acclaimed filmmaker and his wife, Michelle. In contrast, that has shocked Hollywood. I don't think this guy was ever sober. In another dopey podcast, he talks about doing drugs or having some kind of relapse, if my memory serves me right. This, he denies it, but having a more serious relapse during the time, I thought, maybe it's my memory of this podcast and I'm misremembering, and he said he was just smoking pot, but he's saying to everyone he's not doing any drugs today, and he would go off and smoke pot afterwards. I think he just he never held a job. He never graduated. I mean, just to remind you, he never got his GED. He never graduated high school. He held a short internship on a Family Guy, and they didn't have interns on that show. That was just a special position just for him, unpaid, where his family would drop him off. And he didn't work very hard. He was a slacker. He took that opportunity and anything that his dad or family gave him, and basically threw it away, just like he threw away every chance he had, all 18 chances to get his life together in rehab.
Look, you know, I have a voice to some degree. I'm going to say what I got to say while I'm here.
At least you didn't sell out. You know what I mean? You stuck to your guns. Right?
Yeah, I'm not going to, no, yeah.
But you would say, you were like, I'm sober today, and you didn't want to get into the water, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure it put you in a really bad spot.
It did. It was hard.
Was it really uncomfortable?
Yeah. It was uncomfortable, but I felt like it was like part of the job, part of what I had to do.
It was the job. Let me ask you a question. You don't have to answer.
No, I like where you're going.
Would you get...
I like where you're going with this. You're making me a victim. Here I had a huge opportunity, a kind of writers dream about having a project that's actually made. Finally, I get it made, and I don't want to do any press for it with my dad because my dad's involved. I don't want to actually, show any kind of gratitude. This guy had zero gratitude for anything. I read that quote about him at Thanksgiving saying, I have no gratitude for this effing food. I have no gratitude for the company, meaning my family and the friends who were invited to this 2018 Thanksgiving dinner at the Reiner home at their $13.5 million mansion. The estate is said to be worth $200 million, which would put his share at about $66 million, I believe. And already $4 million of that has gone to they say it's gone to Alan Jackson, who stepped down, because I believe my interpretation of the vague things that have come out is that the more distant members of the Reiner family said to Romy and Jake, what are you doing getting him this high-powered defense? I don't know how deep it went. I don't know if they warned him that Alan Jackson represented Harvey Weinstein. He represented Kevin Spacey and aggressively demanded Kevin Spacey's victims' cell phone records going, to embarrass him. And he dropped out. The victim dropped out, and that was the end of that case. But embarrassing people with their cell phone records was held on over to the Karen Reed case. So I don't know if they said you want your parents to be dragged through the mud if they were more familiar with his work, or they were just like, look, to use your parents' money to defend their killer is revolting. And the public's reaction to it was revolting too. I mean, it was revolted. Most of the public, the thinking public, was like, how is the victims playing for the killer's defense in this case? And there's the Slayer law in California, but there are all sorts of loopholes. So we always seem to have, like, even if there are some kind of victims' rights laws on the book, there's always loopholes to it. They're allowed to use the money until they're technically found guilty. It's really hard to enforce, even the way it's written in California, which seems airtight. It's not. There's loopholes for mental health defenses, et cetera, et cetera.
High afterwards, after the appearance?
Yeah, I would. I'd smoke a joint on the roof of my apartment.
Let me ask you something
after,
else.
Please, he's answering the question.
And in a very hard to be this honest, but right? I mean, yeah, I would not ever go on to these things like, coked up or anything like that. I try to be straight, use the appearance as my motivation to be straight.
He would try to use the appearances as motivation, which I guess what I heard was he tried and sometimes failed. And he'd go on them coked up. That's what I heard. Let me know what you heard.
Do as best I could on it, and then afterwards enjoy a joint. After.
Did you ever do like dope after or anything like that?
That's why
you didn't shoot coke or dope this year.
No, I haven't done that in about 3 or 4 years.
There's no moderating with that. Shooting coke.
There's no moderating. That's a whole life right there.
Was your dad? Did your dad know you were getting stoned?
Yeah.
Would he get pissed?
No,
he didn't give a. He's a hippie. Your dad,
the reason
right?
He's a hippie. Yeah, and they're very understanding.
Well, they're happy you're doing well.
But see, me saying this, I feel first of all horrible about copping to the fact that I. But
do you feel horrible in front of us about it?
He feels horrible in front of the Dopey Nation.
Dopey Nation, I'm sorry. Also, in front of you guys.
This is not the choir group, and you don't have to feel upset about it.
But I feel a little hypocritical myself.
Yes.
Okay.
I think I'm more open-minded than you are.
Because I've made this big thing that
I'm like, the only requirement to be on Dopey is the desire to stop.
But Nick doesn't want to stop using.
No, I know.
So he doesn't meet your requirement.
We've had different, like, he thinks like somebody needs to have a lot of time to come on, and I'm like,
no, somebody needs a day.
Yeah.
Listen.
Somebody needs a day?
A day. 24 hours.
Come on after 24 hours?
Yes.
You're lying.
No, he's saying Todd
What's the truth? What's the truth?
He's like, Todd needs like so much time.
Yeah, so they had to do so much talking to try to bring Nick out in this. I know it's a conversational podcast. I've listened to other episodes, but they do a lot of talking. We'll get back to this another time. So that's what I have for today, guys. I'm going to keep it short. Please support the podcast. I cannot do it without you. Links are in the description of this episode. You can buy me a coffee. Venmo, send a donation via Venmo, or become a patron on Patreon and get access to content you won't get anywhere else. I will see you guys tomorrow. It's 6. Have a great night, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Mic check, Roberta strides through the static haze. True crime Gotham where the shadows play their plays. Fraudsters fold when a spotlight beams. Fact focused queen busting propaganda schemes. Glass shatter lies echoes through the streets. Standing for victims, giving voice their beats. NYC Post, truth sharp as night. Roberta exposing she's the anti-fraud light. Hard task warrior, dissecting state and defense. Twisted innocence, claims breaking pretense. Gotham's truth seeker cuts clean with the blade. Facts in the forefront, no justice gets swayed. Cold facts drip heavy, real talk unfurls. Cracking cases open like oysters with pearls. Innocence gimmicks crumble to dust in the wind. For victims, her creed, justice till the end. Headphones blazing, she drops heavy artillery. Narratives twisted, meet blunt object civility. Roberta got receipts that unravel the ploy. Exposing the lies these fraudsters deploy. Glass shatters lies, echoes through the streets. Standing for victims, giving voice their beats. NYC Post, truth sharp as night. Roberta exposing she's the anti-fraud light.